Sorry, for some reason Facebook ended my video, so now we're on part 2. I haven't refreshed her Twitter to see what else was there since I was they shut off my video. Someone says, have you done any background checks on Bobby Dassey, such as interviewing people who have possibly witnessed abusive behavior from him, or possibly hired an expert in criminal psychology to evaluate his behavior? And Kathleen said, we have had experts evaluate the violent porn and create a profile. Cindy says, was the witness that smelled the foul odor burning ever questioned? Is she affiliated with Scott's workplace? And Kathleen says, we have an affidavit from the witness. There is no connection with Scott's workplace. And then Lee says, what is the significance of Scott Taddock being at ASY at 12 noon that day? And Kathleen says, because the contact with Teresa requesting the address is made close to the point in time when he's present. Yeah, and people questioning all of a sudden the video here says, your video is done. So Facebook shut me off. So I had to start a part 2. Sorry about that. Out of my control. Nope, nothing new yet. We're at 12:43. Still nothing new. This is going slow. People asking what was the news. There is no news. It just seems like she's doing a Q&A where you can tweet her as long as you use the hashtag Ask Zellner. So you could submit a question, but it doesn't mean she answers it. Refresh. Still nothing new. So yeah, part 1 will have, she listed, I think it was like 18 items of her theory. And I read those off in part 1. And let me refresh. Still nothing. All right. Chris says, is there any evidence of a body being burned at the smelting facility? And Kathleen says, a witness who wrote the note, but the body would have disintegrated. And that's something somebody here, either in Stephen Avery Project or in MAM Gossip, had talked about, that there's no way you could put a body in a smelter and then have bones left over from it or something like that. I can't remember. And that, there's liquid in the body and all this. I don't know all that stuff. Roizen says, I fully believe Bobby killed Teresa, and for whatever reason, Scott was involved in cover-up. However, is it really believable that either would realistically remember Stephen's finger bleeding and think to take Stephen's blood from the sink? And Kathleen said, of course, the police had just been on the property and he would have been panicked to divert attention from himself. And it says there's 2 new tweets. Leanie says, aside from a witness saying Scott was on shift, is there CCTV, clock cards, payroll records that back this up? And Kathleen said yes. Sean says, apologies if I am repeating a previous question. Can you speculate as to motive by the suspect? Sponsorship from others? And the S in the starting sponsorship is a $sign. And Kathleen said, it was a rage killing motivated by rejection. That was my theory early on. But then when I watched her recreation, it made it look like it was something more that was planned to intentionally kill her. I thought it was Bobby got her to pull over with the premise of a hustle shot and then made a pass at her or something in some way. And she denied him and then he killed her. Lee says, what is the significance of Scott Tadek being, okay, so it's the same question again, but a different answer. What is the significance of Scott Tadek being at ASY at 12 noon that day? And Kathleen said, because it's after Teresa called requesting contact with directions. Plus he lied and said he was in Green Bay visiting his mother at the hospital. New tweets. Bobby's computer shows activity at 1:51. Was the computer used to communicate with Teresa or was this via someone else's phone? And Kathleen said communication was not by phone. Todd, I see your question real quick about the battery thing. She's claiming that the RAV4 battery died and somebody replaced it with a Crown Victoria battery. New tweet. Courtney says, has the suspect been questioned on this? And Kathleen says he was questioned in a lame interview by investigator Dietering. Dun, dun, dun. The battery in the RAV4, Debbie. In Teresa's vehicle. All right, now it says 2 more tweets. Okay, Philippa says, what's the best explanation for the scratches on Bobby's back? Kathleen says they are inconsistent with scratches from a puppy, consistent with scratches from the fingers of a human hand. Dan says, why has Bobby not been re-questioned and DNA tested after these findings? And Kathleen said, Bobby was re-questioned in a lame interview with investigator Dietering. Sorry, I'm quiet as I'm waiting for her to do another tweet, and then I'm scrolling through your things to see if there's anything I can answer. A lot of people asking what's the news, and it doesn't seem like she's giving us any, this is an announcement of news. This is another one of her Q&As where in the part 1 of this video for Facebook Cut Me Off, she began with listing 18 things on what she has learned in the case. So she stated all those and then opened it up to Q&A. All right, let me refresh this. All right. Ryan said, would Bobby have access to Stephen's blood? And Kathleen said, yes, he had access to Stephen's blood because he had access to Stephen's trailer on 11/3/05. Sean, this is one of my Dumb and Dumber hats. I thought this was the right costume for the occasion. So good eye, Sean. And I'm dressed up because anytime I do anything, the guilters follow me and want to comment on what I'm wearing. So I dressed up in a suit jacket and pearls, and I thought that, and I put makeup on. Woo, look at me, I'm fancified. Samantha, who gave Teresa directions and how did they know to give it to her? And Kathleen says, we believe the killer gave Teresa directions. Amanda said, sorry. Amanda said, any witnesses from the smelting plant where Scott works come forward. And Kathleen said, we've interviewed some witnesses. And there's 2 more tweets. Hannah says, was there any video surveillance at the smelter facility? Kathleen said no. Samantha said, so was this the same burn barrel they found bones in on Stephen's property, or was this a whole new barrel? And Kathleen said, same barrel. Willow Wicket said, do you know where the missing 60% of the body is located? Kathleen said, we believe that it was disposed of at the smelter. All right, nothing new right now. I'll scroll through. Everybody asking what's the latest, where does the case stand and all that. The case stands at Kathleen will be filing on December 20th. So we don't have anything new until then other than the little morsels that Kathleen gives us from time to time. So like today, this is a, huge thing for us to have this opportunity. Tim says, do you think that Colburn had anything to do with moving the RAV4 any longer? Also, do you think Lang planted the key? And Kathleen says, it doesn't matter. The RAV4 and the key were planted to frame Stephen Avery. Michelle says, do we know if Bobby or Scott ever interacted with Teresa prior to 10/31? Meaning, is it possible that Bobby had his eye on her for a while before she was killed? And Kathleen said yes. And Kat said, any indications as to what the suspect's motive was? Did he want Stephen back in prison? And Kathleen said, motive was rage fueled by rejection. Angela, the 18 points are in, there's a part 1 of this. I had started it and then all of a sudden Facebook shut me off. So I had to start this part 2. And top of the morning to you. Joel, if the suspect confessed officially, how quickly could Steve Brennan be released? Kathleen says the confession would have to be corroborated. It's impossible to know how long it would take. I just submitted a question, but I don't think it will be answered, so I'm not even going to say what it was that I submitted. Nothing new right now. Yeah, and somebody else in, I believe it was our group, MAM Gossip, is the one that suggested I do this live for people that don't have Twitter. And as I said earlier, I don't like Twitter, so I don't really use it, except for like this. So even me doing this, looking at this Twitter, I really don't know what I'm doing. Right. It's so funny that then now, my iPad goes off telling me, now you can't see it, it's just a thing, that she tweeted something, but it wasn't saying anything on my computer. 7 pairs of panties said, and now a friend just texted me saying, what the fuck are you wearing? 7 pairs of panties said, have you traced who changed the battery or owned the battery that was put in her car? And Kathleen said, yes. And Renee, I'm wearing my lovely Dumb and Dumber top hat. and some pearls, and a suit jacket. Because the guilters always say that I literally took a shower right before this went live. So they claim I don't get myself all gussied up for, when I'm on camera. So here I am. Because it's all about me. Anya said, if Bobby pursued Teresa, how come nobody knew and stepped forward during the trial? That's a moderator asking me a question. And Kathleen said, Bobby was a state star witness. Let me look at whatever moderator was sending me. Yes. What moderator was just sending me is that in the gossip group, there's a whole bunch of people taking screenshots of all these tweets and like submitting one at a time. So she asked me if it was okay if she just rejected everybody's posts. And because we're going to be putting them all up at once. So there's no need for us to have post after post of one tweet after, just one tweet at a time. So, all right. Next one. Dan, are you now ruling out the ex-boyfriend as a suspect? If so, what's the explanation for him having Teresa's handwritten day planner? And Kathleen says, a Denny suspect can be involved in the crime or the cover-up, so we have not ruled him out. Amy says, hadn't Teresa taken photos for the Avery Dassies previously? Why would she need to call for an address directions? Kathleen, she was only given the Dassey phone number and not the salvage yard address. Because she did not know the Dassies, she left a voicemail asking for directions. Oh, that makes sense. Well, not that all the other stuff doesn't, but I'd never thought of that before. It was always very confusing on asking for directions, and she's been there a whole bunch. Andrew, would Bobby have hung the deer in his garage to conceal Teresa's blood? Or is it likely that she was dismembered elsewhere? Kathleen, Bobby's story is inconsistent as to when he hung the deer, making it highly suspicious that he had an ulterior motive for hanging it. Nothing new right now. I like the hat, don't trip. Yes, Renee, I'm quite fancy. I have to go to my nephew's. My nephew's in his high school musical Music Man tonight. Should I go dress like this? Cock it to the side. Natalie, if the Dassey garage gets tested and Teresa was ever in there, do you think it would still be possible to find traces of blood in there? Kathleen, of course. DNA lasts for years and blood is very difficult to clean up. Christy says, I remind her of the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. Don't make me go get, I have a Mad Hatter hat. I could have worn that one now that I think about it. Maybe I'll wear it for you tomorrow, and tomorrow's live on in Gossip. Always got to be fancy. I need some fancy sauce. Ooh. Kathleen says, last call for questions. We'll wrap up in the next few minutes. It's only 1 o'clock, so she's only been on a half hour. Last call. BA says, has elections changed the way you are approaching this case? And Kathleen says, no, but it may change the outcome of the case. For those that didn't know, both the governor and the attorney general lost on November 6th. And they were people that wouldn't even consider releasing Brendan and Stephen. Nothing new yet. So Christy's saying, so in a nutshell, her nutshell is still the same. She's saying that Bobby Dassey is who killed Teresa. And Scott Taddock helped. And that Dan, definitely wear the hat to Music Man. It's at Willowbrook, Dan. So you think Willowbrook would like this? So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Is she's again just going, she's giving us some more stuff, but it's still all pointing to Bobby. Haley said, I completely agree with you. What would Scott's motivation be in helping Bobby? From what I've read, they didn't have a close relationship. Why would he get himself involved? And Kathleen says, wrong. They were close. Yeah, because Bobby and Scott belong to the same hunting club. And they like killing things. None of the other Dassey boys like to kill stuff. BB, we need sweaty sweatshirts. We're working on it. Refresh. Nothing new. So, Christy, since you're here, can you post the link to the Brendan petition in here? And we'd like people to go sign the juvenile interrogation protection law. And that is something that Injustice Anywhere worked on, along with, I worked with Laura Nyrider, one of Brendan's attorneys, in getting this petition written. So it's old. We've had it for like 2 years. And we just believe that you should not be able to question juveniles without an attorney present. Not a parent, because as we can see in Brendan's case, a parent doesn't always have the best interests of their child in mind. You need an attorney there. There's a new tweet. Kaylee says, do we know why Teresa pulled her car over after she left the ASY? And Kathleen says the perpetrator induced her to pull her car over. That's something too, if you haven't seen it, there is a YouTube that Kathleen did a recreation of what she thinks happened. But in that recreation, it's not showing, because her recreation is what I've always thought, that it was Bobby like made a move on Teresa and she rejected him, and that's why he killed her. But in the recreation, it looks like he had her pull over just so he could kill her, and Scott was there to help move the body. So one new tweet. Somebody who has me blocked. And Kathleen said, we have 2 more witnesses that confirm. So Holly Pop says, how is Scott involved? Cover up. So it says. Taylor says, well, the battery is new news. Correct. Because like we've heard before that law enforcement was trying to say, the sheriff's department was trying to get Brendan to say that Stephen had disconnected the battery, so whoever had her fob couldn't like set the alarm off or anything. And yes, I know who that is. I knew who it was, Christy. They were trying to say that That's how they're able to, that, you know, they found the DNA, the sweat DNA on the hood latch because he went in there to do the battery. So they really needed something to be said about that engine and the battery. And now we know why, because they also switched the battery. Oh my God, Chris saying the line from Lord of the Rings. I bawl at that part in that movie. Okay, I'm not going to bore everybody with that. There's one more tweet. Again, with the person who blocked me, and Kathleen saying that's irrelevant. Most serial killers are married with children, living normal lives. The person who this is that blocked me is one of the people who is with the family, who at all costs will try and defend Bobby. So that's what they're doing, is trying to defend Bobby. And Kathleen is telling, and so I'm sure they said something about Bobby's lived a normal life and is married and has children. Doesn't matter. So, and that's what Kathleen was saying there. And that person is an idiot minion. Kathleen says, thank you everyone for your questions and for following along with all our new evidence. Big things still to come. So let me refresh. I see Christy just posted the petition. Thank you very much. Nothing from that. Let me refresh again and see if there's anything else. If not, all right, let me try and, do I have to just keep scrolling down to go through her? I'll read you the 18 things that she started with to close out this. Okay, number 1. On 10/31/05, Scott Todek visited Bobby at the Avery salvage yard around noon. 2. After Teresa called the Dassey landline for directions, our suspect contacted her back with the Dassey address. 3. Teresa arrived at the ASY around 2:31 p.m. on 10/31/05. Only Bobby and Steven saw her. After completing her photo assignment, she left and turned west on Highway 147 around 2:38 p.m. Our suspect followed her. Steven was in his trailer. 4. Our suspect gets Teresa to pull over. She opened her car's rear cargo door to retrieve her camera, was knocked to the ground, and struck with an object. 5. Teresa was put in the rear cargo area of the RAV4 and driven back to ASY. ASY is Avery Salvage Yard, if you don't know the initials. 6. Teresa's RAV4 was spotted leaving the ASY with an unknown driver at 3:45 p.m. 7. RAV4 was left by the old dam west of Michigan on 10/31/05. 8. 3 witnesses saw RAV4 up to 11/4/05. Then it was gone. 9. Recent investigation shows the RAV4 battery died, so it was replaced in order to move the RAV4 to the ASY. 10. Teresa's body was burned in a burn barrel. Dassey burn barrel had human bones. 11. 60% of bones and 31 teeth missing. 12. A witness smelled a horrible odor of something burning in Manitowoc County gravel pit the evening of 10/31/05. 13. The Dassey garage was never luminoled or DNA tested. Bobby hung a deer in the Dassey garage on 11/4/05. 14. Sickiki note. Body burned at smelter 11/4/05, 3 a.m. Todek worked the night shift at a smelter facility. His nickname? Skinny. 15. Teresa's electronics were not burned in Steven's burn barrel. They were burned in Dassey burn barrel. 16. Suspect knew Stephen's finger rebled on 11/3/05 because he observed it. 17. Suspect had access to Stephen's trailer to remove blood from the sink. 18. Only our suspect knew the blood in the sink was Stephen's and not Teresa's. This rules out the police. 19. Suspect planted blood in RAV4, bones in Stephen's burn pit, and Teresa's electronics in Stephen's burn barrel. In conclusion, the killer is the person who had the access and opportunity to plant Stephen Avery's fresh blood in Teresa Halbach's car. And then here's Q&A. Do you think it was Bobby? We cannot rule him out. I was blocked. No access, no opportunity, not the blood vial. Has Bobby's garage been searched for DNA and blood? Yes, in progress. Is there any evidence on if Bobby and Scott had contact with Ryan before the killing? No proof of that. How do we know Scott was on ASY at noon? Witness confirms. Is there evidence that supports they knew there was fresh blood in his home, or did they enter the home just in hopes of finding plantable DNA? There's evidence the person knew Stephen's cut finger broke open and that he bled on 11/3. How do you know it was replaced? We've confirmed that it was replaced with the wrong size battery for the RAV4, the same size battery that is used in Crown Victorias. Where is the call log proof that your suspect called Teresa back with the address? Not restricted to a call log. How do we know the battery died? Because it was replaced with the wrong size battery and it was still under warranty. What evidence shows the electrical items were moved from Dassey burn barrel to Stephen's burn barrel? Nothing was burned in Stephen's burn barrel. Tin cans and vegetation present. Ran ant saw fire in Dassey burn barrel. Have you had access to the RAV4 yet? No, this is an issue on appeal. 60% of bones and 31 teeth missing from the Dassey barrel, you mean? Because they were removed and transported to the Avery barrel? They are entirely missing from ASY. Black tweet, we have 2 other witnesses. Have you done any background checks on Bobby Dassey, such as interviewing people who have possibly witnessed abusive behavior from him, or possibly hired on expert in criminal psychology to evaluate his behavior? We have had experts evaluate the violent porn and create a profile. Was the witness that smelled the foul odor burning ever questioned? Is she affiliated with Scott's workplace? We have an affidavit from the witness. There is no connection with Scott's workplace. What is the significance of Scott Tadek being at ASY at 12 noon that day? Because the contact with Teresa requesting the address is made close to the point in time when he's present. Is there any evidence of a body being burned at the smelting facility? A witness who wrote the note, but the body would have disintegrated. I fully believe Bobby killed Teresa, and for whatever reason, Scott was involved in cover-up. However, is it really believable that either would realistically remember Stephen's finger bleeding and think to take Scott's blood from the sink? Of course, the police had been on the property and he would have been panicked to divert attention from himself. Aside from a witness saying Scott was on shift, is there CCTV, clock cards, payroll records that back this up? Yes. Apologies if I am repeating a previous question. Can you speculate as to motive by suspect? Sponsorship from others? It was a rage killing motivated by rejection. What is the significance of Scott Tadek being at ASY at 12 noon that day? Because it's after Teresa called requesting contact with directions. Plus he lied and said he was in Green Bay visiting his mother at the hospital. Bobby's computer shows activity at 1:51. Was the computer used to communicate with Teresa, or was this via someone else's phone? Communication was not by phone. Has the suspect been questioned on this? He was questioned in a lame interview by investigator Dietering. What's the best explanation for the scratches on Bobby's back? They are inconsistent with scratches from a puppy, consistent with scratches from the fingers of a human hand. Why has Bobby not been re-questioned and DNA tested after these findings? Bobby was re-questioned in a lame interview with investigator Dietering. Would Bobby have access to Stephen's blood? Yes, he had access to Stephen's blood because he had access to Stephen's trailer on 11/3/05. Who gave Teresa directions? How did they know to give it to her? We believe the killer gave Teresa directions. Any witnesses from the smelting pot where Scott works come forward? We've interviewed some witnesses. Was there any video surveillance at the smelting facility? No. So was this the same burn barrel they found bones in Stephen's property, on Stephen's property, or is this a whole new barrel? Same barrel. Do you know where the missing 60% of the body is located? We believe that it was disposed of at the smelter. Do you think the Colborne had anything to do with moving the RAV4 any longer, or do you think Link planted the key? It doesn't matter. The RAV4 and the key were planted to frame Stephen Avery. Do we know if Bobby or Scott ever interacted with Teresa prior to 10/31? Meaning, is it possible that Bobby had his eye on her for a while before she was killed? Yes. Any indications as to what the suspect's motive was? Did he want Stephen back in prison? Motive was rage fueled by rejection. If the suspect confessed officially, how quickly could Stephen Brendan be released? The confession would have to be corroborated. It's impossible to know how long it would take. Have you traced who changed the battery or owned the battery that was put in her car? Yes. If Bobby pursued Teresa, how come nobody knew and stepped forward during the trial? Bobby was the state's star witness. Are you now ruling out the ex-boyfriend as a suspect? If so, what's the explanation for him having Teresa's handwritten day planner? A Denny suspect can be involved in the crime or the cover-up, so we have not ruled him out. Hadn't Teresa taken photos for the Avery's Dassies previously? Why would she need to call for an address directions? She was only given the Dassey phone number and not the ASY address. Because she did not know the Dassies, she left a voicemail asking for directions. Would Bobby have hung the deer in his garage to conceal Teresa's blood, or is it likely that she was dismembered elsewhere? Bobby's story is inconsistent as to when he hung the deer, making it highly suspicious that she had an ulterior motive for hanging it. Knock it off. Sorry, my dog's wanting to go out. If the Dassey garage gets tested and Teresa was ever in there, do you think it would still be possible to find traces of blood in there? Of course, DNA lasts for years and blood is very difficult to clean up. Last call for questions. We'll wrap up in the next few minutes. Has elections changed the way you are approaching this case? No, but it may change the outcome of the case. I completely agree with you. What would Scott's motivation be in helping Bobby? From what I've read, they didn't have a close relationship. Why would he get himself involved? Wrong. They were close. Do we know why Teresa pulled her car over after she left the ASY? The perpetrator induced her to pull her car over. Black tweet. We have two more witnesses that confirm. And again, that black tweet, as well as this one, where Kathleen says that's irrelevant. Most serial killers are married with children, living normal lives. That person is one of Carla Chase's minions, who they're desperate to try and say that Bobby didn't do it. And so Kathleen finished with saying, thank you everyone for your questions and for following along with all our new evidence. Big things still to come. And I will refresh now after reading all that just to make sure there was nothing else while I read all that. And there's not. So To recap for the 414 people who are still here with me, she is still saying that Bobby is the killer. And so it's, Teresa had been to the salvage yard several times to take pictures for cars that Stephen had arranged. And Stephen has said that Bobby always noticed when Teresa was there and would say, "Ooh, your girlfriend was here," those kinds of things. So he was always, paying a lot of attention when Teresa was there. Then you have all the things that were found on Bobby's computer. They can try all the semantics they want and say it's not Bobby's computer. So yes, anybody in the family could use the computer, but where was it? Bobby's bedroom. The police evidence pictures shows the computer at that time was in Bobby's bedroom. And so the searches on that computer were done at times that Bobby is the only one home during the day because he works a night shift. And these searches were done on weekdays when the people who live there are either at work or at school. So Bobby is the only one who would make those searches on the computer. Family members who want to defend Bobby will put the blame on Stephen and try and claim that Stephen went in there and could have done those searches, or one or two of Barb's ex-husbands or current husbands, or you can't keep up with the husbands, that they would have done it. But Stephen had his own computer at his house, his own internet that was also searched. Zero porn found on his computer. And so why wouldn't, if he's wanting to look up porn and dead women, why wouldn't he do that in the privacy of his own home on his computer? Why would he go to Barb's, where that computer also had it was password protected? So you're saying now they let Stephen have their password as well, and that he would search for porn while he knows Bobby is at home because he works a night shift, so he would be there sleeping. So Bobby had been looking up women that looked very similar to Teresa Hallback. Also, there was searches that included RAV4 and also had Teresa's name on there. Stop. I'll let you out in a minute. So the theory is, knew Teresa was going there. Then when Teresa left, he hopped in his car, his Blazer, followed her, and then had her pull over, asking for a hustle shot. A hustle shot is when, sit down. Oh, this dog's gonna crap in my house now. When she worked for Auto Trader, when she went on an assignment to take a picture, when somebody had already arranged this through Auto Trader, she would only get $10 for the picture. But if it's a hustle shot where she finds out somebody's selling a car and takes the picture, and then they purchase an ad through Auto Trader, she gets 20. So she gets double the money if she does it, this hustle shot. So Bobby pulled her over, asking for a hustle shot, and then had her go in that cul-de-sac on Cuss Road to take the picture. And then whatever then happened there. And Scott Taddock helped Bobby after. So that's it in a nutshell. And really the only real new thing we got out of this Q&A today was the battery. That she knows that the RAV4 had a different battery in it, which was not the correct battery for that vehicle. And it is a battery that is typically used in Crown Victorias, which is a typical law enforcement vehicle. I don't know what the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department used at that time, but we all know Crown Vics are police vehicles. And she says that she has traced where that battery came from. So we don't know the details on that. So who's the dude in the window? That's just a decoration. I'm scrolling through things. I'm only going to stay on here. We're at 1:26. I'm only going to be here for 4 more minutes, leave this at an hour. But we will be doing a live tomorrow in our MAM Gossip group, which is a closed group, not public like the Stephen Avery Project page is. And I'll be doing that at 1 p.m. my time. So it is 1:30 my time right now. So I'll start a half hour earlier from this time tomorrow. And so we will go over this stuff in there and some other things. MAM Gossip is where we get a little more in depth into the case. On the Stephen Avery Project, we try to just keep it about what we're learning about the case, not any of this. It's called MAM Gossip for a reason, So if you're not in MAM Gossip already, join that for our live tomorrow afternoon. John, how much for the hat? Name of price. I also have the light blue one. I got both. All right. So is the dog for sale? Nope. Don't ask me. I've got 3 dogs, none for sale. Oh, Tara says, what am I getting out of holding these tweeting sessions, I wonder? I'm getting fame and fortune. I'm ready for my close-up. Sorry. Reading through comments here, scanning through if there's anything real quick in these last 2 minutes, if there's anything. If Bobby planted the blood in the RAV4, he must have moved the RAV4. So how did the police change the battery, or did the police work with Bobby to move it? Amanda, what I believe from what Kathleen has said is Bobby planted the blood in it and then abandoned it at Kuss Road at cul-de-sac. Or he planted the blood in it when it was at Kuss Road. And then Colborne, after getting reports, found it at Kuss Road. Bobby had nothing to do with the RAV4 getting back to the salvage yard. That was now law enforcement, or not, so I should say Manitowoc Sheriff's Department and Ryan Hilgas. They needed Ryan Hilgas, possibly Scott Blodorn, and Mike Hallbach. The 3 of them were all involved in it, in getting them a key for the RAV4. And then police planted the RAV4 at the salvage yard. Sheriff's Department, because the police are not a part of this. It's the sheriffs. And so as Kathleen says, the police the sheriffs did not plant the blood in there. They don't know whose blood that is, and they're hoping that Stephen is the guilty person at that point. So right then, they think they're framing a guilty man. They want to make sure that Stephen goes down for this. I hope that made sense. We are now at 1:30. So I am going to go. Sorry for all of you that are still asking questions, but I don't want this to be rambling on forever. So we did have, there was a moderator that was taking screenshots of all these tweets, and they're going to put it in a photo album here on Stephen Avery Project in the public page that is then available for anybody to see. And then we'll also have it in MAM Gossip, which is our closed group. And then tomorrow at 1 p.m. my time, I'm in the Central Time Zone in Chicago. We're going live at 1 so we'll discuss this and anything else new that's come up. So I'm trying to end it now, but I keep getting notifications that keep coming up right here and blocking where I end it. And there's another one. So, all right, get off here, things. All right, so literally as soon as I get it off, another one comes out. All right, so thank you for joining me, and we'll see you tomorrow.